This year's legislative session drew headlines like never before. 2 Republican walkouts, protests drawing thousands to the Capitol steps, a failed cap-and-trade bill, and major funding for Oregon schools. Oregon House Speaker Tina Kotek joins us to talk about the accomplishments and struggles of the past year. From KGW News, this is Straight Talk with Laurel Porter.
Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. The recently completed Oregon legislative session made national headlines. A lot of people will remember this session for the cap-and-trade showdown, with Republicans leaving the state to prevent a vote. In the end, the bill that would have made Oregon the second state in the nation to pass cap-and-trade went down to defeat. But in the 160-day session that went down to the wire, there were a lot of other bills that did pass, bills that didn't get as much attention and mean significant changes for Oregonians. Here to give us her perspective on what lawmakers accomplished and what's still left to be done, welcome to my guest, Oregon's Speaker of the House, Democrat Tina Kotek. Welcome back to Straight Talk. It's been a while. It's great to have you back.
Thank you, Laurel. Nice to be back.
There was certainly a lot of drama around this session. It started with some tension over an investigation into sexual harassment, ended with that cap-and-trade showdown, the walkout by Republicans, and then a flurry of activity with last-minute bills. All in all, how would you grade the 2019 session?
Well, there was a lot that went on. I would give us a B+. And frankly, we'd be an A if we had gotten the climate bill done. But there was drama from start to finish. It was a really whirlwind 6 months.
So a B+, even though it's been described as the most acrimonious legislative session in recent memory, and that they feel like, some observers feel like you sort of lost the narrative to Republicans.
Well, there certainly was a lot of drama in the last 2 weeks. No doubt about it. National press on that. But I think if everyone steps back and puts that off to the side and really looks at what was accomplished, major bills, many years in the making, got done in our session and will have impact for the state years from now.
And we'll dig into some of those. What was the #1 highlight for you, most significant piece of legislation that passed?
It would have to be the Student Success Act. We started more than a year ago saying, how do we finally, after 30 years, identify that dedicated funding stream to really provide the schools that our students deserve here in the state of Oregon. So we had a committee, they went around the state, they came up with this bill, and now we're going to have new investments. They're going to come into our schools at $1 billion more per year through a new business tax. We are finally solving a 30-year-old problem with that bill.
You know, I remember when you were on the show a few years ago, the last time I asked you, what is it going to take to improve education, get those graduation rates up? And you said it's really going to take a game changer. Is this the game changer you were talking about?
It is the game changer. It's a set of investments with a way to fund it on a stable basis that is really going to make the difference. But it's not just about the money. We started with the question of what do we need to make schools better? We decided what those were, what it would cost, and found a way to fund it. And we're going to have additional accountability too. It's not just money, we want to see outcomes. So between the money and what we're spending it on and the outcomes that we're looking for, we're going to see just transformative change for our schools.
Let's talk about those outcomes. What tangible results are we going to see? Are we going to see a longer school year? Are we going to see smaller classes? Are we going to see higher graduation rates, and when?
Well, I think we're going to see higher graduation rates. And what we're going to see is local school districts looking at their individual needs, because every district's a little different, and using those dollars in a very planful way. And those plans have to be connected to, are you improving your graduation rates? Are you improving outcomes for every student? Not for just certain populations of students, but all students. Big emphasis on equity. Those plans are going to have to be approved. And if schools aren't doing well, we funded teams that could come in and help those school districts succeed. Every district's a little different, but at the end of the day, wherever you are in this state, students should have the things they need to be successful.
Well, Republicans staged their first walkout over this bill with the business tax, and the governor, to get them back to come vote on this, she had to give some things up, and she gave up some things that were important to a lot of people. A gun control bill, a vaccine bill rankled a lot of people. Did she give up too much?
I think she stuck to the priority, which was we need to get the Student Success Act done. We need to solve a 30-year-old problem. Those bills are important. We'll have time to come back on those, but it was a choice she made at the time, and the result is we passed that bill. And it was really unfortunate because you had major sections of the business community not only supporting the bill, but also staying neutral on the bill. For example, Oregon Business and Industry saying, we're going to stay neutral on this new tax. We don't love it, but we understand that we need to invest in K-12 and early childhood education in the state. So that first walkout, I just didn't understand what was going on.
Do you think the vaccine bill and gun control will come back in the short session, even though you're going to have cap and trade to deal with?
Well, that's a good question, because the short session is much more complicated. We do hope to come back on some gun safety legislation, particularly around safe storage. Vaccinations, I think, is a longer conversation. You know, when we started the session, no one thought we were going to do a vaccination bill. That came across because of the Southwest Washington problem with the measles outbreak. It wasn't a priority. We're going to come back on it, if not next year, the year after, I'm sure.
Let's tackle the whole cap and trade issue, the drama over that, and Republicans' 9-day walkout fleeing the state. And they used a tool that's allowed them in the state constitution that requires a quorum, or 2/3 of the Senate or House, to be present in order to convene. At the time, we talked with Republican State Senator Tim Knopp of Bend when he was somewhere in Idaho after he fled the state in a cabin, and we talked to him by telephone. Let's listen to what he said about why they walked out.
We had about 1,000 loggers in the Capitol the other day, and it didn't seem to have any impact on the thinking of those who are pushing this bill forward. And so the only option we had to slow this down and get the attention of the public and the majority was to deny a quorum and walk out.
The Republicans did have a lot of support from their constituents. We saw the rallies on social media, GoFundMes to help pay for their fines that they had because they walked out. Does this illustrate the urban-rural divide?
Well, I think it illustrates kind of the polarization in politics. And over such a really important bill, it was disappointing to see that happen. I think we're seeing this across the country. Instead of people digging in and playing by the rules, which in this case is, even if you're in the minority, come in, help us make the bill better. And we actually did improve the bill, I think, to the benefit of rural communities. We didn't articulate that or communicate it very well. I think when they walked out, they were saying, we're done playing by the rules. And honestly, I don't think that's okay. And hopefully that's something we don't see in the future.
Do you have a message for Republicans going forward?
Help us make this bill work for your communities. We'll sit down, we'll talk about it, because honestly, because of climate disruption, rural communities who are so dependent on natural resources industries are the ones who are going to be most affected by the climate changes that's happening, the weather changes, the droughts, the fires. Help us help all parts of the state. I want to hear those conversations. I'm going to do a lot more listening because the bill is not going away. Let's continue to improve it and do what's best for the state.
Will it come up again in February? And what's going to be different?
Yes.
What will change?
Well, I think we'll continue to stay with the market-based approach. It is the best economically for the state and what we've constructed in terms of how polluters will be required to pay for their pollution and use those resources to help the state, frankly, adapt and prepare for climate change more than anything else, because it is coming, it is here, and transition to a cleaner energy future. The bill is the way to go. The question is, did we get it completely right? If we didn't, let's fix it.
Because the dynamic, is it going to be any different in February between Democrats and Republicans over this whole issue?
Well, I hope that I'm starting soon in the summer, having more conversations with my Republican colleagues and say, look, what can we do? What can we do differently?
Is there a discussion about changing the quorum rule? Because a lot of states don't require 2/3 of the lawmakers to be there, only a majority. So that would take away that possibility of walkout. Is that something that you're talking about?
I think I'll leave that to other folks. I'd like to think that over all these years, this hasn't been an issue. However, we do have a very high quorum requirement compared to other states. I don't think people realize that. Like you said, it's mostly simple majority, but that will take a constitutional change, and I'm going to leave that up to other folks. Right now, I'm focused on educating people about the climate bill and trying to get it done in February.
Senate President Peter Courtney warned early on about Democrats pursuing too many bills, too many progressive bills, and alienating the Republican colleagues. Do you think you overplayed your hand?
I think we did things in the way we normally do, which is big ideas, very strong, transparent public process. And, if you ask some people, there's some sense that they just didn't want to play by the rules. That being said, what we did in the House, I can't speak to the Senate, but in the House, I had regular weekly meetings with my House Republican leader. We talk things out. When he had concerns, I tried to listen. When his members needed things, I listened. We can do this without people walking off.
The governor says that she may use her executive powers to implement some of the policies that were defeated in the cap and trade bill. Do you support that, the governor using executive powers for the cap and trade policies?
I'm hoping we can figure out how to get the bill passed, because I think it is complicated and we've done a really good job of putting together the right program. If we can't pass that bill next year, then we're going to have to talk about it. I cannot understate the importance of doing something on this issue. We are running out of time to do what's best for our state and frankly for the country on reducing our carbon emissions. We can't keep ignoring this conversation.
The idea that the governor might use her executive power has kind of rankled Republicans who feel like she would be exceeding her authority. And there's some bills they're not happy about that passed, including the driver's license for undocumented immigrants. And they've launched a recall effort collecting signatures to recall the governor. The chairman of the Oregon Republican Party, Bill Courier, told our news partner KXL there are a lot of different groups backing this recall effort. Let's listen to what Courier had to say.
It's going to be a challenge, and it's going to take a lot of effort, but the reason that we're pursuing this is that it's been very clear that there's a lot of energy from all of these groups, and we're getting hounded. We've been getting hounded daily for a number of weeks on people wanting to get involved, recall the governor, stop this bad legislation. And so we just kind of did the math on it and said, the numbers are there. We could do this.
The numbers are going to be tough. They need 280,000 signatures. It's a tall order. Governor's never been recalled in the state of Oregon. What do you think about that effort?
Well, my first question is, when I heard about it, is how does this move the state forward? How does this make sure that people can afford where they live and have the things they need? A recall effort is a big distraction, and honestly, I think it's partisan politics at its worst. I think it's Trumpian partisan politics. We don't need that in Oregon. So I guess I'm sad, and I think it's a waste of people's time.
Let's talk about something that you were really excited about. A key priority for you was housing.
Yeah.
You championed that. You're able to pass the first of its kind statewide rent control bill. I think you guys call it a preventing rent gouging bill. How significant is that? What does it mean for renters and landlords?
It's a national model. That bill is really important for our renters. We had a bill in the 2017 session that didn't get done. We came back, tweaked it a little bit. That bill will say you can't take people up a big hill on rent increases. They have to have some predictability, and you can't evict people for no good reason, because frankly that's what had been happening and people were losing their housing. We have a homelessness issue in Portland because people don't have housing, and when you lose your housing, you're going to have a hard time getting it back. So that bill is incredibly important. Republicans
and some economists have said that it's just going to scare away investors, drive down supply, and drive up rents.
Well, landlords told me that, with 7% plus cost of inflation, most landlords, if they're doing this as a kind of a small business type approach, can make that work. It's those large investors who want to make 20, 30% in investment returns, who don't care about the people they're renting to, that are the problem. So I think they'll be fine. We said new construction is exempted for a certain amount of time, so new construction can happen, but at some point, even those units would then be stabilized through this legislation. It'll be fine. I think people just might not make just as much money as they were making before, but they're still going to build things.
And there's a companion bill, too, that's supposed to increase supply that bans single-family zoning in neighborhoods. It can be duplexes, triplexes, quads, cottage clusters now. A lot of neighborhood associations are against that. They think it will change the character of their neighborhood.
Well, we have a land use system that we all value in this state, and one of those goals in our land use system is making sure we have enough housing. If we just continue to build standalone single-family homes, we will not have enough housing for everybody who's here now and who's moving here. So House Bill 2001, the missing middle bill, says let's do duplexes and triplexes and townhomes where they can fit in places that currently don't allow them. We're going to have more diversity of choice. We're going to have more affordable options, because if you can build more in a lot, your construction costs are going to be less. So some of those units for home ownership will be a lot less. Affordable housing developers said we need this. Regular developers said we need this. This is the change that we need to make sure we have enough housing choice in the state.
Another accomplishment for Democrats, lawmakers passed a Medicaid funding bill that increases the tax on hospitals and insurance, creates a 6-year funding stream, and brings in federal matching dollars. Yeah. It also includes something you referred to, voters. Voters in 2020 are going to be voting on this tobacco tax that'll bring in more money. So I want to let people know what they'll be voting on. It would raise the tax on cigarettes by $2 a pack. It would increase the cap on the tax on cigars from 50 cents to $1. And it would enact a wholesale tax on tobacco inhalant delivery systems, commonly known as e-cigarettes, for the first time, vaping products. Voters will see this in November of 2020. It'll bring in about $170 million plus every year. Yep. What will that money be used for?
Well, it's going to go to the Oregon Health Plan, our Medicaid program. 90% of that will go to fund the plan, which we need. It's insurance for millions of Oregonians depend on that Medicaid program. And we've made a special piece to say we should put more of that money into mental health services, which everybody knows we need more of. And then 10% will go to tobacco prevention and cessation, trying to keep people from smoking in the first place.
There was a somber note at the legislative session. We lost a well-regarded state lawmaker, Jackie Winters, during this session. She was the only African-American Republican ever elected to the legislature, and you made the announcement of her death from the House of Representatives in late May. That must have been a tough day for you.
It was really hard. I knew she was sick. I don't think we all knew how sick she was. And even despite her illness, she made sure we got juvenile justice reform before she left the chamber.
That was her last vote.
Her last
18th.
vote. She made sure that happened. And we followed suit a couple weeks later, passing that bill on our floor. And I think a couple days later, she passed away.
Why was that important to her?
We have for decades now been really punitive on how we work with youth offenders in our justice system, and it's not evidence-based. And frankly has been unfair. And Jackie was a champion on this issue. She knew what it meant on how we were treating youth. We were putting them into the adult prison system. That wasn't working for them. It wasn't working for these young people. Going forward, we're going to have a much better approach to dealing with young people who get involved with crime. We want people to be rehabilitated, and Jackie she believed in that, and it was really amazing. I mean, that's a legacy issue. That was decades in the making to get that done.
She'll be remembered for a long time and sorely missed.
Yeah, very much.
We're going to take a break right now, but when we come back, we'll talk about sexual harassment at the legislature, what's changed since a lawsuit was settled earlier this year. We're back in 2 minutes.